Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to this ordinary meeting of Wingecarribee Shire Council on the 15th of May 2024. We're slightly delayed because of the public forum and some technical problems, but that's all been resolved. Thank you very much. Can I remind everyone to turn your mobile phones off or onto silent, and that this meeting is being recorded and broadcast. Welcome to you all. I understand that online there are a number of students across the Shire who have an interest in town planning and who may wish to make a career out of that, and I wish them well, and that there's a number of planning issues on the agenda tonight, so hence they are encouraged to do so. And as I understand it, the council is organising next week, I think it is, an activity for students who may wish to become involved in local government. It's a great career. Just on that matter, the council, I think, now has a target of 5% of graduates and apprentices and that type of thing to work at the council, most of whom are locals. So it's providing opportunities for local people, which I think is a credit. Having said that, I now move to acknowledgement of country. Wingecarribee Shire Council acknowledge the Gundungurra and Tharawal people as the traditional custodians of this land we now call Wingecarribee Shire. I pay my respects to elders both past, present and emerging. I'd also like to extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders present here or watching today. Statement of ethical obligations. As Administrator, I will undertake the duties of the Office of Administrator in the best interests of the people of the Wingecarribee Shire Council area and act faithfully and impartially in carrying out the functions, powers, authorities and discretions vested into me under the Local Government Act or any other act to the best of my ability and judgment. I am committed to the declaration of conflicts of interest in relation to items listed for consideration on the agenda or which are considered at this meeting in accordance with the Code of Conduct and Code of Meeting Practice. Obviously, there are no apologies. Minutes. There's been 2 meetings. I would move the minutes of the ordinary meeting of Council held on 17 April 2024 be adopted as a correct record of the proceedings of the meeting and declare that carried. In relation to the extraordinary meeting on 1 May, I would move that they also be adopted as correct record of proceedings and declare that carried. General Manager, declarations of interest.
Thank you, Mr. May. There are no declarations of interest.
Thank you. There is no minute. Look, this agenda tonight is huge. And a lot of it relates to policy, which will be going on public exhibition. Councils normally don't have introductions to items. That's something that I introduced when I came here, so we got a better understanding, and also I got an opportunity to see some of the staff in action. I am suggesting tonight that we do matters by exception. This is how councils operate. They go around the table and ask councillors whether there's anything they want to talk about or move amendments to, and then they get the call. Only being one person here, I will do that myself tonight, and I think the rest of the items where there is no discussion or where the staff don't have further advice. Further advice, when you have a number of people at public forum, I like the officers to address the issues that are raised in their reports, and that will still continue while I'm here. But in relation to dealing with matters in total, I intend to do that tonight. So to do that, I've got to move suspension of standing orders. I move that they be suspended to bring forward the following items for consideration by exception. Now, I'll go through the matters that I want to discuss, and then I'll invite the General Manager whether the staff have any matters that they would like to discuss. So if someone's got a pen to write all this down, 8.1 I'm happy with. 8.2, Bowral South New Living Area Master Plan and Strategy, project update. I want to call that one. Um, 9.11, Urban Tree Management Policy. I want to call that. 9.28, Mittagong Road Closures Post-Exhibition Report. I want to call that one. And also I want to afford an opportunity for the officers to respond to what was said earlier. 9.29, Monthly Financial Report. I want to call that one. 10.1, Commercial Waste Collection. There's no recommendation. I want to call that one. And 10.2, 132 Barradoo Road, Barradoo, rezoning for public purposes and LEP. I want to call that one as too. I have some questions. General Manager, they're mainly policies going on public exhibition, but have you got any matters where the staff wish to do introductions for clarification or have any additional information that's come since the printing of the business papers?
Thank you, Mr. May. In addition to the items you've identified, I request that items 8.1, 9.1, 9.13, sorry, 9.1, yep, 9.13, and 9.15 be introduced prior to determining each matter. Thank you.
Oh, I've got to start again. Yeah, no, sorry, it's my fault. Just so that we're clear, I'll start again. I would move for adoption, the officer's recommendation, as outlined in item 8.3, Southern Highlands Innovation Park Progress Update. 8.4, Windsor Carriby Integrated Transport Strategy Draft for Public Exhibition. 8.5, Voluntary Planning Agreement for Land at Yarrabah Road, Moss Vale for draft for public exhibition. 9.2, Community Emissions Action Plan for draft exhibition. 9.3, Asset Management Policy for adoption and Asset Management Plans for public exhibition. 9.4, Mount Gibraltar Heritage Reserve Plan of Management draft for adoption. 9.5, Community and Crown Land Natural Areas, Bushland and Watercourse Plan of Management for public exhibition. 9.6, Compliance and Enforcement Policy Draft for public exhibition. 9.7, Council Operations Environment Policy Draft for public exhibition. 9.8, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Acknowledgement of Country Policy for draft public exhibition. 9.9, Public Art Policy for draft exhibition. 9.10, Backflow Prevention Policy for draft for public exhibition. 9.12, Loan Borrowing Program Policy for draft exhibition. Draft for adoption. I'll repeat that then. 9.12, Loan Borrowings Policy Draft for adoption. 9.14, Windsor Carriby Shire Council Biodiversity Weed Control Program Draft for public exhibition. 9.16, Emergency Services Levy Reform discussion reform. 9.17, assets, premises and funding of the NSW Rural Fire Service Inquiry submission. 9.18, Australia Day 2024, review and outdoor dining fees post-exhibition report. 9.19, project reinvigorate, Mossvale Civic Centre internal refurbishment, expressions of interest. 9.20, culvert upgrade, Priestley Street, Mittagong, tender evaluation report. 9.21, culverts renewal, Robinson Street, Mittagong, tender evaluation report. 9.22, insurance and insurance brokering services, tender evaluation report. 9.23, land off Railway Avenue, Colo Vale, licence for permitted use from Transport Asset Holding Entity of New South Wales. 9.24, Bradman Foundation, request for sublease for kiosk and approval to carry out works. 9.25, Bundanoon Club, proposed lease. 9.26, part reservoir at 40 Charles Street, Hilltop, lease to Amatil Proprietary Limited. 9.27, part 230 Oxley Drive, Barrel, Lot 3, DP 222145, council lease from Telstra Corporation Limited. 9.30, investments report, April 2024. 9.31, minutes of the Canberra Region Joint Organisation, 1 March. 9.2, Traffic Committee, April 2024, meeting minutes. Got it? 9.32. Oh, did I miss that one? 9.32, Traffic Committee, April 24, meeting minutes. You right? Declare that carried. So that's all those items. I've adopted the officer's recommendations. We now go back to item 8.1. Look, we're still in suspension of standing orders, so it'd be in order for me to bring forward the Mittagong matter. 9.28, Mittagong road closures post-exhibition report, to save you hanging around for quite a while while we deal with all the other matters. So I'll bring that forward. So that's starts on page 232, General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Acting Director, Corporate Strategy and Resourcing, Mr. Kuzmanowski, will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. The purpose of this report is to seek resolution to not proceed with the proposed road closures at Charles Street, Part Thomas Street and Part William Street, Mittagong. On 13 December 2023, Council resolved to place the proposed Part road closures on public exhibition for feedback. The proposed Part road closures were placed on public exhibition from 20 March 2024 to 24 April 2024, with 47 submissions received, noting 45 submissions were against the closure and sale. A petition with 133 signatures has also been received against the proposed closures. Submissions against the proposal include loss of open space, possible increased traffic, bushfire concerns and connectivity for pedestrians, and this was outlined today by the Speaker this afternoon. It is noted that within the report and recommendation, an incorrect reference is made to the future Mittagong Town Centre Master Plan, where the reference should be the potential infill development opportunities in Mittagong West. I recommend that the updated recommendation reads, Council not proceed with the proposed road closures until the strategic connectivity implications arising from potential long-term infill development opportunities in Mittagong West are further investigated. Thank you.
I also raised with the staff, I thought talking about Mittagong CBD in this land is a long way away. I I'm happy with the recommendation, but I'd like to make some observations. I'd be more than happy to come down and meet with the residents in this area about the condition of your roads generally, and opportunities in years to come for potential infill on the western side of the Hume motorway up in behind where you live. But it is not in the residential strategy at this stage. I just think it's short-sighted for the council to look at potentially selling some of this land when in 20 or 30 years' time, or even longer, there may be redevelopment up on that hill. So I'm more than happy, if you want to contact the office and get everybody together, to come down and give you my views of the world. Also, if the council had sold this land, which is not, it's not, but you must reinvest that money into roads. And if you read the original recommendation, I added an extra clause when this came to council, reminding the staff of their obligations under the Roads Act. But it's not happening now, so there's nothing to worry about. So, as I say, if someone wants to make contact with the office, I'm happy to come down any time. But I want to meet you all together rather than one at a time. And I come in peace, if I could put it that way too. I would move the amended officer's recommendation, if we can get a bit bigger on the screen. Declare that carried. You can't talk now at council, but I'm happy to come and meet you and explain it to you, but sleep tight, don't worry too much about it, all right? Okay, I move resumption of normal proceedings and declare that carried. General Manager, we now go back to the order in which you've listed matters. Item 8.1, the Village Place Plan Program 24-26.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Executive Manager's Strategic Outcomes, Mr. Killick, will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, fellow residents, I'm pleased to introduce our Village Place Plan program for 2024-2025. Off the success of our multi-award winning Robertson Place Plan. Place plans are about council resident cooperation to identify the community's economic, housing, environmental and cultural needs. They are about consensus building and prioritising for public domain investments, updates to planning controls and placemaking and cultural initiatives. The program adopts a place continuum, and that's the diagram that you're seeing. And the place continuum model moves from master plans for our town centres, such as our Bowral Town Centre Master Plan, village place plans for our villages that are experiencing change, such as Bundanoon and Colo Vale, and place profiles for all other villages which are being prepared with the Communities in Place Division of Council. Bundanoon is experiencing change with recent development activity, and there's a need to identify how to invest into the public domain with footpaths, open spaces, and ensure cohesive planning controls to protect local character. Colo Vale will experience change over the next 7 to 10 years as the Wensleydale new living area comes online. It's therefore recommended that the Village Place Plan program for 24 to 26 be endorsed.
Okay, in relation to item 8.1, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 8 of the business paper and declare that carried. We now move, General Manager, to 8.2.
Thank you, Mr. May, and back to the Executive Manager's Strategic Outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report provides a progress update about the Bowral South new living area, and this has been presented at recent community forums, landholder briefing, and at community group meetings. I'm sure a lot of people have already seen this presentation. I'll be as brief as I can. I always start with explaining that strategic outcomes is about the long term, not the next few months, but not just the next few years, but really the middle of the century, the next few decades. And this plan is very much about, this master plan is very much about planning for that long-term change in Bowral South. It does respond to a changing demographic. Our population is increasing modestly, but increasing nonetheless, and we are experiencing population change, and I'm being polite there, we're ageing, and by the 2040s, a third of us will be over the age of 65, and at different stages of life, we require different types of housing. It's important to paint the Shire-wide picture. We are governed by the LSPS, the planning statement, as well as the local housing strategy that's been adopted, and Bowral South is one of the new living areas, one of 6 new living areas. To save everybody from reading the housing strategy, there's just really one number. It's 50-50, 50% infill and 50% new living areas or greenfield. So when I say infill, I mean within the town form and village form, primarily within our towns and less so our villages, as well as that other 50% being accommodated in new living areas. I like to paint the Shire-wide picture before we dive into Bowral South. We always start with a constraints map, and this is Town Planning 101. And I'm going to build the layers for where it's not appropriate to consider for future urban development. So I'm building a bit of a strudel, a backliver of layers here, starting with the Sydney Water catchment area in red, areas that are inappropriate for urban growth. And you can see in grey there the existing towns as well as the Innovation Park near Moss Vale. So building the layers, the national parks and nature reserves, obviously we exclude those areas. Conservation, environmental conservation zoned areas or C2 areas, we exclude that. Obviously inappropriate for town expansion or village expansion. We often exclude natural slope over 18% because generally it is more expensive and inefficient to build on sloping land, and it has high visual impact implications when people build on a slope. Flood-prone areas, what you see there is the Wingecarribee floodplain, but of course the next slide you'll see all the riparian corridors and the creeks. So you can see with the 40-metre buffer around all the riparian corridors, the creeks, we are a very constrained shire. The mapped heritage items, we have a lot more in there, you just can't see it because of the scale of the map. When you zoom into the town centres, we generally exclude during high-level analysis. That doesn't mean you can't develop around heritage items or heritage conservation areas, it just needs to be more sympathetic. And those are the conservation areas, the main one around Berrima, historic Berrima. Again, we have a lot more, you just can't see it because of the resolution of the mapping there with the town centres and the villages. We also exclude high-value agricultural land. We preserve that. I think we have a lot more than this, but in terms of what's mapped, I need to rely on state data, and at the moment we exclude those areas. High-value vegetation areas, again, we exclude that because that is established practice. To exclude from further town growth. So if I overlaid all those maps, we get the strudel or the backliver out of the oven. Red is a very harsh colour, but you can see our shire is very constrained. I often say, we're the size of a small European country. We're the size of, if you overlaid Wingecarribee on Sydney, we cover dozens of local government areas across Sydney, across Greater Sydney. But red is a very harsh colour, so let's switch it up and see the opportunity areas. In green, potentially suitable land. The operative word there is potentially, because not all areas there are suitable when we apply the suitability matrix. And this is looking at infrastructure, sewer, water, as well as access to amenities, social infrastructure particularly. And so we have a 3-tier system there from most suitable to least suitable. There's very little appetite to build new villages or new towns in the middle of paddocks, incredibly inefficient to service those new towns and villages. So generally we do look at around the towns and villages. And that brings us to, why Barrel South, and that's why I started with the Shire-wide picture, because often we zoom in and fixate on one area, such as Barrel South. It's adopted in the local housing strategy. It responds to a changing and modestly growing population. And the great thing about Barrel South is that there's an opportunity for a new village centre, a small village centre, an opportunity that was missed in East Barrel, or we tried and it failed. It corresponds to infrastructure upgrades, so the Barrel STP is being upgraded, and so Barrel New Living Area, naturally, it's our first new living area being master planned. A quick overview of our project timeline. So this project kicked off early last year. We've had more recently, we've had community workshops, community forums, very intensive period of community forums. And I'd like to remind the community, councils often don't do this, leading the master planning process. It is a 300 hectare site. Most councils leave it up to the developers to lead the process. This is actually, I think, groundbreaking in that we're leading with, council is leading with community to mould the master plan, because there's 12 separate landowners, and often in that sort of setting you get 12 separate master plans, which aren't always cohesive in terms of outcome, both public domain and infrastructure. And one thing I've been doing, my style is transparency. We've been releasing land use plans, emerging plans as they're developed by our consultant team, our urban designers and our engineers. And residents can check out the latest emerging draft master plan, both on the agenda report as well as participate with Jacarabee. Diving into Barrel South now, just to orientate everybody, it's the 300 hectares on the intersection of Erridge Park Road, Kangalin Road, and down to the Wingecarribee River. And we're very much defining the long-term boundaries of Barrel as the river and Bong Bong Racecourse. Again, we overlay the constraints. Constraints, I think, we call them constraints. I like to celebrate constraints such as heritage, both First Nations heritage as well as European heritage. Looking at the ecological constraints, again, we view them as constraints, but I think there are opportunities because there are perimeter trees, paddock trees, creek line trees that can potentially be retained as part of the master planning process, and our urban designers have been doing that. And of course, looking at the flood liable land, the 1 in 100 flood level, as well as the PMF level, the riparian corridors, and our engineers, both our consultant engineers, council engineers, are cooperating with Water New South Wales to ensure that we meet all the requirements of the New South Wales flood planning policy. I know this has attracted quite a bit of attention around flooding. The hydrology is very similar to what East Barrel used to be. This council does stormwater management quite well. Credit to our development engineers. Retford Park, Retford Farm, East Barrel are examples of best practice in terms of stormwater management with detention basins. I would like to emphasise that hydraulic engineering is a very complex subset of civil engineering, and so a lot of the concern is about technical matters, which really emerge at the DA subdivision stage. The urban design principles, I'll very quickly run through these. This was one of the first things we did with our community workshops. Community design workshops, where we define, okay, what do we want from this new living area? And a lot of these principles, to anybody with design or planning training or urbanism training, they're not new, they're good old-fashioned British town planning principles. I think the test for success is really principle 1, getting a compact village centre for local services. The other is locating that village centre in a place where it is viable, so it doesn't fail, like the East Barrel example. And I always say, the village centre in East Barrel, wonderful pub, but it's not somewhere where you can get your groceries. So we do need to be smarter about the area that we zone, and that's backed up by the economic analysis that we've been doing. Again, opening up the riverfront, again, another test for success. I'd love to have a boardwalk there one day, as well as ensuring that the village centre is active and vibrant with residential around the village centre. The idea of social neighbourhoods, mixed neighbourhoods, and this comes to appropriate low-scale density, both detached homes, but also seniors housing, dual occupancies, townhomes, and shop-top housing as well. Again, these are details that will be reflected in the DCP around the orientation of streets, ensuring that the orientation of streets follows best practice urban design. And in terms of the visual outcomes, reflecting the local Bowral character is very important, as well as open spaces both along the river and throughout the precinct as well. Where we are at the moment, our consultants, we're working them very hard. So we have due diligence investigations that are ongoing. These will all be exhibited as part of the public exhibition process. The focus has been on the village centre. It really is the anchor. So we've looked at the parameters of success. We have 2 economic reports, and it relies on a catchment of both Bowral South, 2,000 plus new dwellings, but also East Bowral and parts of Burradoo. The viability outcome, it has to be anchored by a supermarket, a full-line supermarket, as well as non-retail and retail tenancies. So that's your takeaway places, your allied health, GP, childcare, services that everybody has to go into Bong Bong Street to access. And this is an opportunity to take some of the pressure off Bong Bong Street when we have a small village centre without compromising the primacy of Bong Bong Street. It's been a very intensive community, early community engagement session with quite a few community forums, one-on-ones, as well as a landowner consultation session. I'd love to hear more. Again, we're releasing information and maps as they're developed. Many people have already seen the draft land use plans. Again, these are on Participate Wingecarribee. The colours look the same at first, but it really anchors around the viability of the village centre between option 1 and 2 and 3. Option 1 is most viable because the village centre is located on the corner of Eridge Park Road and Kangalin Road to capture that passing trade. So the emerging draft land use plan, again, dotted lines, draft watermark, to show that it is emerging as our urban designers work through it. And you can see the village centre on the corner of Eridge Park Road and Kangalin Road, the riparian corridors in green, as well as the riverfront. We have amended that blob of purple that you see, which was put there by our urban designer as large lot residential. The instruction has been, let's open that up for open space rather than private open space. And this is the emerging draft master plan based on that draft land use plan. There's a lot on there, so I'll allow everybody to sort of absorb that. Again, it's online, it's all draft, it's emerging, and again, most councils don't do this. They often leave it to the very end during the public exhibition period to have your say. We're doing it, I call it the Nordic model of transparency, just releasing things as they're developed. And the highlight there for me is a riverfront boardwalk that you see in black dotted lines there. The next steps, so the community consultation is ongoing. There's a validation workshop in the next few weeks with that select workshop group. Again, all of this is before the public exhibition process, where we'll have drop-in sessions, online surveys, and of course formal submissions. And we are engaging, as part of this process, our consultants are engaging with state agencies for the technical aspects. Again, some imagery about what Bowral South could look like one day, especially the village centre, and some of the built form outcomes that we're aiming to achieve. Thank you.
Thanks for that comprehensive overview. Look, well, firstly, I'd just like to say that this follows through with a commitment that was made when I first came here, that we would take a strategic approach. And that was one of the reasons why the General Manager was appointed, that we looked at the bigger picture and the community took back control of its planning. It wasn't led by developers and landholders. And I have a personal view that if this council had have done this years ago, there'd be a lot more public facilities, like an indoor aquatic facility, which could have been paid for easily by the development that's happened. You only need to look at the south of Moss Vale to see what the community's not getting out of that site. but this sets the precedent for the rest of the new living areas. This is a process like the place planning that this council hopefully will follow when elected members come back. Is that right?
Indeed. I mean, I often say, we're not forgetting our villages. That's why we have the Village Place Plan program, and with the master planning exercises for the town centres as well as the new living areas. It's best practice from a professional perspective. Again, councils don't do this. It's left up to the developers.
So I think good councils do. But look, I've got a couple of questions. I read and I'm asked about why we're building houses on a floodplain. And your diagrams clearly show, and I know from the residential strategy, this is not the case. Can you confirm that?
Indeed, there is a lot of misinformation and, dare I say, disinformation out there. The flooding is complex. Hydraulic engineering is very complex. I'm not an engineer. I am a town planner and designer. We're not putting homes on the floodplain. That's out of the question. It's about defining what is the flood planning level, and that's in keeping with the New South Wales flood planning policy. Here I do need to delegate to the engineers, and both the consultant engineers, council engineers, as well as Water New South Wales, they're confident that the hydrology is very similar to East Bowral, Retford Park and other former development areas.
Well, then this leads to another question that I've had representations from people in relation to the provision of more open space there and playing fields. The draft provides the open space and the playing fields, which you say you believe are adequate, but to put the area, I think it's, I'll get my north-south mixed up a bit, but it's around Bong Bong Racecourse on the Robinson side, put it that way. Why wouldn't the council, in the review of its LEP, look at that site for compulsory acquisition for playing fields in might be 50 or 100 years' time, to put this floodplain development beyond question? Would that be an opportunity, or am I talking too far ahead?
It's definitely visionary. We're probably looking at the 2050s, 2060s, 2070s. It was designed based on the needs of from the communities and rec strategy. There's a lot in there in terms of netball courts, tennis courts. I think there's 4 football, soccer courts and multi-purpose ovals. I think we get 2 ovals from that emerging master plan. That idea around the eastern side of the precinct near Bong Bong Racecourse, we did make a commitment in the strategy that we would define the long-term boundaries, town boundaries of Bowral, and the commitment there was it's the river and the eastern boundary with Bong Bong Racecourse. So when we define that's almost like a town growth boundary, which is a very prudent way to define what's urban, what's town, and what's rural. I'm very supportive of that. There is an opportunity perhaps for future playing fields. I'm not sure if the need arises for this immediate precinct. There are proposals for extending the new living area, which we're not accepting. So a lot of the talk around extending the new living area is really about increasing dwelling yields. I just can't justify that given the flood hydrology of that area. And also it would be enveloping Bong Bong Racecourse on all sides. And again, we've made that commitment that the long-term boundaries of Bowral is the river and the eastern boundary with Bong Bong Racecourse.
Look, I agree totally in relation to the boundaries set for Bowral South. We were very clear, but I just wonder, and I'm not going to build it into the recommendation, but I just wonder whether when next year the council reviews its LEP based on all the information that's being gathered at the moment, it'd be an opportunity to look at that land. But anyhow, that's a matter for an incoming council. But I do think that to put to sleep the arguments about residential development on in effect, flood-prone land would put that to sleep, and I would think it wouldn't be worth much any rate if it is flood-prone. The other question I've got relates to the track around the river. The vision is to take that back to Bong Bong, where we've invested a fortune at the moment, and we're about to invest even more to make that make the turn-off safe. That's the vision, and the vision would be that Bowral South will pay for all this stuff.
And that's the whole point of the master planning process. You know, this leads into our DCP, but also our contributions plan, where we can levy developers, landowners, as the development occurs over the next few decades. I love the idea of joining Bowral South, the boardwalk down towards Bong Bong Common. I call it the green necklace around Bowral. It is a long-term approach, and that's what we're about here at Council, especially strategic outcomes. I think it's possible. The interim measure might be using footpaths, shared paths adjacent to Eridge Park Road, but in the long term, with perhaps acquisitions, compulsory acquisitions, we can have a river boardwalk stretching from Bowral South to Bong Bong Common.
Well, I don't want to complicate it, but I take the view that the council should be starting on acquisitions for that now and putting it on the next zoning map. Our intentions to do that, because, you know, where the Bong Bong Common is now should really be, in effect, halfway for the vision of walking and bike tracks, and maybe even horse tracks totally along the river. And I think, you know, that shouldn't be lost. Now, look, thank you very much for that. They're the questions I had. Okay, in relation to item 8.2, the Bowral South New Living Area Master Plan, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 13 of the business paper be declared carried, and I declare that carried. I think from what we're doing now, we now go to 9.1, the preparation of a regional draft resilience plan, so that Leo Drynan can be heard. I would move suspensions of standing orders in order that Mr. Leo Drynan, Director, Realm Consultants, to address Council on this matter and declare that carried. Mr. Dryman, are you there? Oh, I apologise, I didn't know you.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the opportunity to come and speak to you this afternoon about the great work that's been undertaken as part of the Regional Drought Resilience Plan in development. My name's Leo Drynan, Director from Realm, which is a natural hazards based consultancy. This is part of a joint initiative between Goulburn Moree and Wingecarribee. Slightly interesting partnership when it comes to drought, as you face quite different issues and have a different level of resilience in terms of drought. So as part of this study, we're going to be looking across the area as a whole, but also trying to draw out lessons and applications for Wingecarribee in particular. Why are we talking about drought when it's been so wet lately? It's a good question, but now is the opportune time to be thinking about drought. Drought is going to be coming back again. That's a reality. And an important part of resilience is drought planning before it hits. Yes, we need to be active when it occurs, and yes, we need to help people recover, but the best thing we can do is prepare. All of you, I'm sure, remember well and experience the drought that was in 2017 through 19, very extreme. Lots of red areas on that map there showing the extent of that, but even over the last 20 years, there's been multiple instances of drought from the millennium. Some people would even argue that since the millennium drought up until now, we've still been in a period of drought, depending on how you define it. In recognition of that, the federal government has been looking at ways to improve drought resilience across the country, and they established what they called their Future Drought Fund. providing funding to help agencies and organisations, including councils across the country, improve their resilience to it. The New South Wales government has come on board and has developed a parallel program called the Regional Drought Resilience Plan. Maybe in comparison to other states, New South Wales is a little bit behind in the rollout of those plans across all its local government areas. But it is now catching up quite rapidly, and across the state there's probably 10 or so of these plans in development, and I might be right in thinking that Wingecarribee and Goulburn are perhaps the first. If not the first, it'll be in one or two. I think Queanbeyan partnering up with Yass is perhaps just behind us. So it's great to be out in front. The objectives of the program are that we're going to grow the reliance and self-reliance and performance of the agricultural sector across the state and within the LGAs, improve the natural capital of the agricultural landscapes for better environmental outcomes, and strengthen the well-being and social capital of rural, regional and remote communities. I think within that, though, that we can achieve a lot more for Wingecarribee and for Goulburn as we go through the process. And what we're trying to do here is create stronger community connectedness. We're trying to empower our communities to implement transformative activities which strengthen their overall resilience to drought and enable growth and support development, much of which we've just heard about. And we want to support, obviously, at the end of the day, drought affects agricultural parts of the community far harder than others. Not that it's limited to them, but we need to recognise that they need more support. And we are trying to adopt whole system approaches to natural resource management to maximise their activities. The figure on the right there, depending on which way you're looking, shows the elements of drought resilience that we're considering, and basically we're taking a triple bottom line approach to this. So we look at the environmental, which incorporates aspects of agriculture within there, and land management. We look at social and community, which is perhaps the largest area of impact really coming out of the last phase of drought, was the social and community impacts of drought, and of course economic. Drought has a huge impact to economies, and how development and growth of Wingecarribee and its economy can reduce the impact that future droughts may have on its community and environment is a key thing we're trying to unpack, and that occurs through employment, diversity in particular. We're adopting a three-phase approach in the development of this. Phase one is a desktop review, literature understanding, getting what we think to be the picture of resilience for the LGA at the moment, and that we've now completed. We are now in phase two, which is undertaking stakeholder consultation to understand from the community what has been the impact of drought in the past, what they have learned about experience of drought and its impacts most recently, and any ideas that they have about how we can improve our lower those impacts and improve our resilience for future droughts, be that at a individual level, at a community level, or at a whole of LGA level. Really looking for a scale of ideas. Ultimately, we're going to take all those ideas and boil them back down into an action plan, probably be focused around maybe 6 key actions which we think are developable. They may not be implemented by council, they might be more appropriate, they may be implemented by community groups, or neighbourhoods or individuals. Therein, we're open to the array of that. But yeah, providing a plan which can be used as the basis for improving drought resilience is where we're trying to head with this. A brief overview, mindful of your busy agenda of what we've done today. As I said, we've completed our data acquisition and a desktop-based assessment, looking at how resilient Wingecarribee is at the moment. And we look at that both before drought occurs, during drought, and after drought. And we do so from a triple bottom line approach. By understanding the nature of your economy and environment and social systems, how they all link together, that gives us a picture of what's called the adaptive capacity. And you can tie that in with the magnitude and consequence of a drought, its potential impact, that gives us what's called your vulnerability. And I won't go into the details of what that looks like at the moment, but for each phase, before, during and after, we've gone through and said, well, where is the LGA strong or room for improvement in terms of its vulnerability? And it does vary between Goulburn and Wingecarribee. So some interesting initial findings from the study so far. But that's just us looking at data, and really it's more important that we talk to the community and find out what's going on. So we are in a phase of engagement. In fact, I'll be back down here tomorrow to talk to about, I think, 30 or so of the community about their experience of drought and areas where they think we could be improved. We're trying to figure this targeted stakeholder engagement and some community focus groups. We will use that to update our initial findings, come up with our actions. That action list and final report will go off to an independent review by the CSIRO, who are reviewing all of them across the state to bring some sort of making sure learnings from other projects are being implemented. And then we will come back, present here hopefully as well, but also back to the community and report back on what our final plan looks like. A key element of our engagement to date has been our online survey, which is open to date. We've got, I don't know, maybe 50 or so responses. It'd be great to get that up, but it does close, I think, at the end of this week. So if you would like to fill it out, I'm more than happy to provide a link. It will only take 5 minutes of your time. Once we close off that survey and finish the engagement activities from this week, we'll move on into that analysis and reporting phase, develop our long list of potential actions, and then prioritise and refine them down to the 6 or so that we would like to be carried forward. The New South Wales Government, in collaboration with CSIRO, has come up with a basic plan template, which we'll be trying to adhere to, but value add as possible within that. The time frame for this whole thing is relatively quite short, and in fact a draft for the CSIRO is due at the end of this month, so it's a busy week for me, but the ultimate report will probably follow and be finalised in June or early July at the latest. That is pretty much where we're at the moment, but it's been an encouraging start. Thank you.
Thank you. One question I have got is, not everybody is on social media. Has there been print advertising of this? Pardon me.
It has been challenging to get a large amount of print media out there. It's been mostly based online and through distribution of word and mouth by the appropriate contacts within the community.
Okay, I've got a question for the staff. Has the panel been involved in this, the environment panel?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, I might ask the manager to answer that. I believe so, but he'll come.
The next meeting of the community reference panel is tomorrow, and so it is on our agenda, and we're having a joint session of the economy, community and environment panels to meet and to discuss this. So we're around coming down, and we're going to have a workshop around this tomorrow.
Thanks for that. Look, in reading this whole agenda, it's good to see there's a lot of stuff being referred to the panels, which is the exact idea of them. Okay, well, you don't want to add anything else? Or? Okay, well, thank you very much for that presentation. What is the value of the grant? I think it's more opportune the staff answer that.
Sorry, top of my head, I think it's $200,000, and that's part of the planning and also implementation.
And that's for both the councils?
Yes.
And I think it's good we're working with our adjoining council. Okay, I would move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 31 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. Actually, I can't do that. I've now first of all, I've got to go back into council. So I move that normal proceedings be reinstated and declare that carried. In relation to item 9.1, the preparation of a regional drought resilient plan update, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 31 of the business paper 1 and 2 and declare that carried. According to my notes, 9.11, the urban tree management policy for draft exhibition. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May, for the opportunity to introduce this item. Unfortunately, it has recently come to my attention that there were several errors contained in the attachment that I would like the opportunity to correct before you determine the matter. I therefore request that you defer consideration of this report to allow corrections to the attachment and referral to an extraordinary meeting later this month for consideration and determination.
I'd happily do that. When a policy like urban tree management comes to the council and doesn't even have a definition of a tree, I agree with you. Accordingly, in relation to item 9.1, urban tree management policy for draft exhibition, I'd move that the matter be deferred for further information and review by the General Manager. And declare that carried. We've done Mittagong. The monthly financial report is the next one. Internal audit. Pardon me. 1, 5, 3. General Manager.
Thank you, Mr. May. The Acting Director of Corporate Strategy and Resourcing will speak to this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. This report presents the amended draft Audit Risk and Improvement Committee Terms of Reference and Internal Audit Charter for adoption by Council. All New South Wales councils are required to have these adopted via resolution of Council before 1 July 2024. Council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee Terms of Reference have been updated to include the following: defined independence and eligibility criteria for the Chair and members, defined time limit terms for elected ARIC members, requirements for annual work plans and long-term work plans over a 4-year period, and additional review processes, including reviews for each ARIC member. On page 154 of the main agenda, it is noted that there is a correction required. The paragraph should read, additionally, the model terms of reference includes a provision that the Mayor should attend ARIC as non-voting observer. This provision has not, as the report has excluded the word not, so the report should read the provision has not been included in the new terms of reference. This correction aligns with the Audit Risk and Improvement Terms of Reference proposed for the adoption as in the attachment and is consistent with current practices. Council's Audit Risk and Improvement Committee were consulted at its February 2024 meeting on the development of the Terms of Reference and Internal Audit Charter. The resolution is as outlined in the report. Thank you.
In relation to this matter, I see that the current ARIC term concludes on the 31st of August, so there'll be another report coming to Council about that?
That is correct, yes.
Look, can I just make an observation? I think that the the calibre of the people on the existing panel is quite unbelievable, actually. And two of them are local residents, both of who have strong reputations. But having said that, I do think that any group like this does need refreshing somewhere along the line. So, anyhow, in relation, so you'll be noting in the minutes the word "not" should be there.
We could include that in the minutes, that is correct.
Thank you. In relation to item 9.13, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 153 of the business papers 1 and 2 and declare that carried. Now we move to monthly financial report. Look, I appreciate your help. Development assessment, General Manager,
Yes,
page 160.
that's right. Thank you, Mr. May. The Director Committee is in place. Mr. Davis will introduce this item. Thank you.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report responds to the Council resolution of the 19th of July 2023. It provides an update of the performance of Council's development assessment function over the last 9 months to a year. As indicated in the report, Council has determined more applications than we received over the past 12 months. We have improved our response time to customer inquiries on development application, undertaken a multitude of recruitment activities offering attractive market competitive remuneration. We have been appointed a permanent manager of development assessment regulation, Mr. John Sholito, a senior assessment planner, student planner, 2 development engineers, a fast track assessment coordinator, and recently a second planning assessment coordinator. We've reviewed the service provided by various consultants and discontinued 40% of them. We've engaged 2 building surveying consultancies to assist us with building certification in the absence of staff in that area. We have prevented the backlog from increasing. However, in spite of the considerable efforts that have been made, vacancy rates do remain at 50% in the current challenging market. Consultancy costs have remained high and have had to be intensely managed by the new manager and the coordinators. The number of DAs on hand has not been able to be reduced as was planned. The backlog from early 2021 remains, though it has not gotten any worse. And as you see in the numbers, as the older DAs are now being determined, the average gross assessment times have increased to 225 days. All of the recommendations made in the 2021 Development and Regulatory Services Review, or the Righting the Wrongs report, have been completed with the exception of 2. Completion of the active recruitment campaign to fill vacant positions, simply because that has been done but is continuing and is challenging in the current competitive jobs market. Reducing the use of contractors and consultants was the other recommendation, which we can't say has been completed because it will continue to be necessary over the next 12 months, even with positions filled, if we are to overcome the backlog that has been sitting there for the last 2 years, that has not gotten worse due to the efforts, but has not been eliminated. Mr. Administrator, this report recommends that Council note the implementation recommendations from the Righting of the Wrongs report at attachment 1.2 this report, and that Council undertake an expression of interest and procurement of a new consultant panels for development assessment experts, and finally receive a further report on the development assessment service for inclusion in the Administrator's end of term report.
It's fair to say that not having the staff is not through not trying to get the staff.
That's correct, Mr. May.
Yeah. I think
there's been a lot of efforts.
look, and we're actually meeting with the minister tomorrow, aren't we? It's difficult, and I think all regional councils are having the same problem. But the way I read this report, it's compounded by some issues from the past where, look, I actually had one where we actually gave approval to do something on somebody else's land. before the council went into administration. So these matters are all being dealt with slowly. I'm afraid I think people are doing their best, is the best way to put it, but it's you know, we're still not where we should be, and I think it's fair to say everyone's working hard to get there. General Manager, I had a letter from, you've got it?
Yes, I do. Apologies, Mr. May, I had it and I meant to table it. So to table, and we'll make it available as part of the minutes, an email that was received from David O'Brien, who is a franchisee, director and builder of GJ Gardner, an email that was sent on the 13th of May and a previous email from the 6th of May and the director's response. So I believe you've read both of those emails and the response, and we'll table that and include that with the minutes. Just if I may, just to add to the director's comments, we are in a competitive labour market. We've recently addressed, I guess, one of our legacy issues, which is our salary system, which was first mooted back in 2012. We're now offering much more competitive salaries and remuneration benefits than previously, and compared to a number of our neighbours. We are addressing legacy issues, both systems, processes, as well as dealing with some decisions of the past that need to be addressed. The staff that we've been able to recruit are high calibre. The temptation is to take anybody. We don't take anybody. We make sure that they are people that are quality people, and I think the director's done very well to recruit the manager development, assessment and regulation, Mr. Shalito, who was a director at one of the rural regional councils, and our new coordinator will be starting in 2 weeks. We're building a great team of professionals who are working under difficult circumstances, and I believe we will get there. We've just got a little bit more work to do, but a great team who, as you say, are working incredibly hard. Thank you.
In relation to item 9.15, development assessment performance, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 160 of the business paper 1, 2 and 3 and declare that carried. Now I think we get to, if I can now find it, 9.29, the monthly financial report. I called this one because I have a couple of questions. It was never my intent in asking for these monthly financial reports that there would be adjustments done to budget. I think the quarterly financial statement time is the time to do that, not monthly financial statements. Have you got a view on that, or is that the norm in councils?
It's not the norm in the council, so the March quarterly review is our last opportunity to present financial adjustments. In our efforts in being financially transparent, the alternate option was to wrap these up as year-end adjustments, which goes against what we're trying to achieve in being transparent in our financials. So reporting these to council and I guess asking for permission to resolve these changes is a transparent way in presenting the financials to council and saying, hey, we do have some changes that we do need to make heading into end of financial year. So it is transparent in resolving these.
So in effect, you're saying that if you hadn't have done this and had it been tied up in the end of year financials, the council would never have known, unless you dig very deeply to find it.
Correct.
I can't be critical of that. Okay, in relation to item 235, in relation to item 9.29, the monthly financial report, I'd move the officer's recommendation as outlined on page 235 of the business paper 1, 2 and 3 and declare that carried. I called item 10.1 because there's no recommendation. In relation to item 10.1, the question on notice, commercial waste collection service probity matters, I'd move the officers that the matter be received and noted. note ed, and declare that carried. In relation to 10.2, the question on notice about 132 Barradoo Road, Barradoo, I note that there's no recommendation on this matter, but General Manager, you've said you wish to call it on behalf of the staff.
Yes, thank you, Mr. May. I'll ask Mr. Kellick, the Exec Manager Strategic Outcomes, to talk to this item and propose a recommendation to you. Thank you, Mr. Kellick.
Thank you, General Manager. Mr. May, this report responds to a question taken on notice at the extraordinary council meeting of 1st of May 2024, which provided an update on council's attempted purchase of land at 132 Barradoo Road, Barradoo. There are two questions raised about, number one, whether the land has a dwelling entitlement. No, it does not. The minimum lot size there is 40 hectares. And the other question was about whether its existing zoning is appropriate, given it's right next to a sewage treatment plant. Upon further internal consultations and applying a long-term strategic lens on all land matters, a revised recommended motion is made. And that is that the subject land at 132 Barradoo Road, Barradoo, being lot 13 DP 716085, be considered for strategic zoning during the next local environmental plan review, which is scheduled to commence in 2024-2025 financial year, to align with the long-term future of the Bowral STP.
I agree with that totally, because if we needed it a few months ago, we're going to need it into the future. But I just worry about giving notice to any intending purchaser of the council's intention to consider. That's all that it's saying, as I heard you then. So what do they call 149s these days?
As a strategic planner, testing my statutory knowledge, 10.7 certificates, 10.2 bracket 2 certificates, which would have the detail about intended LEP reviews and any triggers to the Land Acquisition Just Terms Act.
So we'd have to add, and such proposed action be included on any section, what did you say, 10.7 or 10.2?
10.7.
10.7 certificate.
Oh, sorry, Mr. May, I think the director would like to just add a parenthesis, I think.
I just should clarify, for a matter to go on a planning certificate, the one that is mandatory with the sale of any property, it can only answer the questions in there, and as such, this has no status, and so it's only once a draft plan, a draft LEP is made, that it can go onto that certificate. So it's just for clarification. So nothing would be able to go on a 10.72 certificate, the mandatory one, but information could go on the additional information certificate at 10.5, a 5 certificate.
So what do people, they apply for both? Well, that'd be their problem.
They don't, but
I just want to be open and transparent. So look, at Robinson, that special kind of, I forget what it's called, but there's a forest, and there's
The Robinson Rainforest, Remnant Rainforest.
Yes, but there's pockets of that on residential properties where people have bought the property and they've thought after they've bought it, oh no, and council resolved some time ago that be included on the section certificates, just so they're alerted to the potential that I think it's the government's plotting, has identified, so that they don't buy the property and then think, I've got to do another survey. So So it's not 10.75 certificate then, is that the wording?
Mr. May, if I can, just to clarify, so section 10.7 in parentheses 5, certificate provides both the information available on your 10.7 in parentheses 2, which is what's provided, and additional matters such as dwelling permissibility, burials on private land, and information on applicability of the council's management and contaminated lands policy if applicable. So people will generally get a 10.7, but not necessarily request a 10.75.
By the sound of what you're saying, you can't put it on a 10.7, you can put it on a 10.75. So let's just run with what I've got there. I just want to be fair to anybody, and you know, if in the future the council was to look at doing something with that land I was talking about earlier, the Bong Bong Racecourse, you'd want to put that onto a zoning certificate too, just to be fair to anybody who. But the council would have to resolve. That's a lot different to what we've done here. I declare that carried. General Manager, anything else?
Just two final things. I think earlier in the meeting, Mr. May, you mentioned about increasing young people entering into local government. So next Wednesday evening we have a careers night for parents and their children, and that will be held in partnership with some of our larger employers, including Barrel Hospital, as well as UOW and TAFE. And then on the Wednesday, we have a number of high schools bringing students through, a couple of hundred high school students coming through for a Careers Day, which will be great. And it's a showcase, and we have over 50 disciplines across council showcasing their work and the opportunities in local government. The second thing I wanted to raise is that unfortunately, due to family and personal circumstances, the Director of Communities in Place, Mr. Davis, will be leaving us. And I just wish to say thank you for how you've led your team, how you've provided the level of professionalism that you've provided, the way in which you've recruited a very strong management team to provide a great foundation for an incoming director, and the way in which that you have conducted yourself during your time at Wingecarribee. It's not an easy gig, as I say. It's a tough environment, and you've always done it with good humour and empathy and professionalism, so thank you.
Look, I can only echo that. This is the second time at different councils we've run across each other, and I've always found you to be professional and to do a good job, and importantly to listen to what residents are saying. And I think that's very, very important. So I think the circumstances aren't fabulous, but you leave us with our best wishes. Did you want to say anything, or? You haven't got to. Yeah, we'll go for your life.
Thank you, General Manager and Administrator. And I'd like to just very briefly thank the staff at Council and the good people of Wingecarribee Shire for their efforts, for collaboration and for their support over the past year and a half that I've been here. I would just, final comments, I would say there's a lot that has been done that the community cannot see the benefits of yet. And I would say I have every confidence in the General Manager and the highly competent management team that we have established to achieve great things for the incoming council and for the Wingecarribee community into the future. Thank you, everyone.
Well, that's no small part of your contribution as well. Having said that, I declare the meeting closed, and thank everyone.